Welcome to AARP Illinois' virtual event. It's wonderful to have you with us. AARP is on a mission to connect with individuals across various communities, especially those aged 50 and above. We're here to listen, understand, and address the unique needs of you and your community as we age. Our goal is to enrich your experience by expanding our local activities, providing opportunities for you to discover and engage with all that life has to offer right here in your own community and virtually. As we journey through today's event, we invite you to consider joining our dedicated team of AARP volunteers. It's a chance to make a meaningful impact and help us better serve those 50 plus across the nation. Connect with us and be a part of this vibrant movement toward positive change. Welcome. And let's make this event both fun and transformative.
Welcome to our program. Have you thought about adding a livable space to your home or converting your garage? These living spaces are referred to as ADUs, or accessory dwelling units. Back in the 1800s, these were referred to as coach houses, and they were common in the city of Chicago. The advent of zoning ultimately prohibited these in most Chicago neighborhoods, but ADUs are making a comeback thanks to a pilot program that began in 2022. Toward the end of our program, I will talk with an expert from the Chicago Department of Housing who will provide details about Chicago's ADU ordinance. But first, AARP introduces you to several people who have constructed ADUs.
Welcome to our program, Family-Friendly Flexible Housing Options. I'm Janae Wheeler, and I'm really excited to share with you some unique stories from people across the country who own or live in accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. Now, an ADU is known by many names. You may be familiar with terms like guest house, in-law suite, or on-site apartment. Simply put, it is a secondary residential home built on the same lot as a larger existing home. It provides separate living quarters, complete with kitchen and bathroom. It could be attached to the primary house or a separate, smaller home built in the backyard in close proximity to the larger house. After years of restrictions, local governments throughout the country are starting to update their regulations to allow homeowners to build ADUs, and for good reason. They are family-friendly options that provide real possibilities and flexible solutions for you and your family's changing needs over time. During this program, we will introduce you to a family that had to move quickly to build an ADU during the COVID pandemic to make room for their loved one. You'll meet a couple who learned just how flexible ADUs really are as they planned theirs for one purpose and ended up using it for another. And you'll see how multi-generational living works for one family who moved into a home already equipped with an in-law suite. But first, let's meet Shirley, who is passionate about her 100-year-old home in St. Petersburg, Florida. She converted her carriage house and garage into 2 rental units that she believes will provide the financial security to help her stay in her home and community after retirement.
Hi, I'm Shirley. I live in Old Northeast, a community in downtown St. Petersburg, Florida, and I have 2 units. One is a carriage house and one I call the cottage. We are a waterfront community. Lots of sidewalks, lots of biking, and our forefathers had a lot of insight to put in parks. I've been here a long time. My family was from here. I was born here, raised here, went away for 20 years, came back, and been back longer than I've been away. This house was built, part of it 1911, part of it 1913. No 2 windows are alike. Everything is, off of just a little bit because it's all handmade. When I bought in 96, I needed to redo everything. And luckily for equity lines, HELOCs, they call them, I was able to do that. So everything went into my house. In 1996, as a real estate agent, I created the rental department at one of the big corporations of real estate. And I was hoping that that was going to be my retirement and training people to take over and getting a residual off of it. But in 2014, their mode of operation changed and I lost it. So I had to reinvent myself. I was a little leery about getting older and how I was going to, have income to stay in my home. I had a carriage house and had a garage, and I saw an opportunity to convert the garage. I drew up some plans. I had a contractor come. Everything is central heat and air downstairs. The laundry room, we shortened it, and that became the bathroom for the cottage. And I put in vinyl flooring, the new plank vinyl flooring. I actually built a bedroom, put in a quartz countertop, and then full-size kitchen appliances. So everything was thought out. Having the ability to have rental units has given me the opportunity to stay in my home. The two women that I rent to are long-term. Sandra came from Nashville, and she was studying for herbology and needed a year or so to finish her degree.
I was looking for a place that was walkable in case I needed to use public transportation, something that was easy and accessible for me to get to via walking and then, hitching a ride, of course, and something that was close to my school. I left a 2-bedroom, 1-bath place that was over 900 square feet. I've come to love the space because the other place was twice the size to clean. I love that it's a little bit smaller and, it's so much more efficient because I like the whole tiny house booming thing that's going on because we don't necessarily always need more. The unit came partially furnished, which for me was much easier moving such long distance. I've moved the room around a few times, but it's very open and there's lots of light because there's lots of windows, which I absolutely love. The breeze that comes through is really quite lovely. It definitely feels more spacious because of the very high ceilings. It's very private. It's also extremely quiet. People have a tendency to think that these types of units are out of their price point. They assume an apartment might be cheaper, or maybe they're worried about their privacy. I think it's the opposite. It's very hard to control the environment when you live in an apartment complex. To me, there is no question that this is a better choice.
The tenants now, they're welcome to use the pool. They can certainly use the tables or the sitting area. It is a visual pleasure to have this yard. So we have beautiful, lush landscaping that takes a lot of work, but it's enjoyable just to see them bloom. You could ask for better. And I think that my tenants love it as well.
I didn't ask Shirley about her lawn care before I moved here, like what she was growing or what she was doing. Lo and behold, I get here. She's got hibiscus everywhere, which I love. And hibiscus is huge in vitamin C and all these great nutrient benefits that herbalism will teach you.
With them in my backyard, I don't want to be down their necks. So communication is really important. I think their privacy is just as important.
When I first moved here, it was a little bit tough trying to find a job. Shirley, because she's so well connected, actually sent out a couple of letters on my behalf to some contacts she had with my resume, just trying to aid in my job search. You know what I mean? She didn't have to do that.
I've been very lucky. I have had just the best tenants. Some of them become friends. Sandra had gone away to see her aunt, and then I had gone and come back. And then when we were all here, I said, oh, it fills my heart that we're all together.
To me, the meaning of home is to feel safe within that space so that you can relax and have that kind of peace at the end of your day. And I have that here.
It is gratifying to be able to have people live in this beautiful neighborhood at reasonable rates, and it's been a relief to have that income to subsidize me to be able to stay in my home.
I can certainly see why Shirley wants to be able to stay in her home and her neighborhood. Renting Shirley's carriage house seems to be a good option for Sandra, too, because it's safe, quiet, and within walking distance to school and work. If you're thinking about having an ADU for rental income, check your local and state guidelines to make sure it's permissible. As Shirley mentioned, effective communication is vital to creating and maintaining a good landlord-tenant relationship. Here are some other things to consider about becoming a landlord.
Thanks, Janae. There are definitely some details about becoming a landlord that are important to note. First of all, when we were selecting or interviewing rental candidates, we wanted to make sure we were aware of the landlord-tenant laws that were applicable. When looking at getting your rental ready, a fresh coat of paint can do wonders. Make sure to have a lease or rental agreement in place, even if renting to family members. Be prepared for unexpected expenses and repairs. We set aside a portion of the monthly rent to respond quickly if needed. Track your income and expenses so that it's not a headache during tax season. All of our rental income goes into a separate bank account to make it easy. Being a landlord has been a great experience for us, and the additional income has allowed us to live here in a neighborhood that we love in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Thanks, Benet, for those helpful tips. Now let's pivot back to the early months of 2020. We were just learning about the COVID-19 virus. Immunizations were not yet ready, but one fact became apparent. Older adults were particularly vulnerable to the new virus. This sets the scene for one Minnesota family who jumped into action to make it possible for their loved one to move out of an apartment at a continuing care facility into their family room and eventually into his own home on their property.
My father-in-law was living in a high-rise facility, a senior facility, and we found out that they had 3 cases of COVID. And Jerry has diabetes, and he's 74 years old, and we felt like we needed to get him out immediately.
The thing I moved in there for was congregate dining and the other activities, and those things were shut down.
I am glad they had the protocols. I think it kept him alive, but he was completely isolated. We decided to have him move in with us. If we could restructure our home so he could live here comfortably, I think we knew that that would be the best thing, because who knew what was going to happen in the future. He moved in June of 2020 to our home.
He was able to live in our family room temporarily, which was supposed to be temporary until March, but because of COVID, the building process took much longer.
I felt bad for Tora because I took over her family room, you know.
I didn't know what I was gonna do because I loved the family room. That's what I would use all the time. It was very fun though having him there, because then he would eat with us every night. We could talk to him. I really liked him being there.
And our house, it's not necessarily designed to accommodate seniors.
To take a shower, I had to go upstairs. I could do it, but it was harder.
As we started thinking about remodeling our home, I was talking to a friend of mine. I'm like, where should we put the addition? And she said, you have a big garage in the back. Why don't you tear that down and put a garage apartment there?
Our garage roof needed repair. We had a carport that was falling apart, so this was something that actually needed to be done anyway.
I looked into the city planning codes and I looked into what the ADUs were, and because there had been some that had been built, and they were charming, they were cute, and I thought this would be an amazing way to give him a place to live with us, but yet it wouldn't be on our home. He would have his own separate space. My husband is gifted with design, and he went to school for architecture, so he kind of jumped into like the very practical part of it, of like, what's it gonna look like? How should it be laid out?
The initial design that I made was far too large, so then we had to come back and modify that design to make it smaller because of the zoning restrictions.
Really having the ADU policy in place made it much easier, because once you could prove that your plan was within the parameters, they said go ahead and build it, which was wonderful.
Honestly, I didn't even process that it was really gonna happen at first, because it seemed like this crazy idea that you could build a house out of where our garage was. But I think once the garage got torn down and they started building the base of everything, it was like, wow, this is actually happening.
The ADU works so well because we've got everything on that one level for him, but he does have a second level if he chooses to use it.
So there is the design element, but then there is also the practical element of making sure that everything was accessible. The builder that we hired is my dad's age. And so he would say things that I hadn't thought of, and that was really helpful. That's what is so unique about ADUs, is you have the opportunity to build a home that will work for you as you age in place. So the doors are wide enough for a wheelchair if he would need one.
The flooring that we used is kind of a slip-resistant flooring, which helps for him, and it's a very safe unit and easy for him to get around in.
One thing I did want was the walk-in tub because of my arthritis. That's one thing I really wanted. It's nice to be able to have my space and my bathroom and the shower too.
We chose tiles that weren't shiny and slick. We made sure that they were more, had a little bit of an edge to it. So, you could walk on it with bare feet and not worry about slipping if it was a wet floor. We put a washer and dryer in his bathroom, and it's wonderful. But those are things that you want to talk through and figure out. We also purposely chose smaller refrigerator. He didn't need a massive refrigerator, so that gave him some more space for his table and chairs. Also, we made sure when we hired the company that put in the blinds that they're really easy to use for his hands.
I don't have to walk a long ways to get to my car or into a parking lot. I can just step out the door and there's my car in the garage. As long as I can continue to drive, it's nice to be able to have that close.
My favorite part of it is selfish because I like the way it looks and how we designed it. And as far as I know, I think the neighbors are happy about that as well.
This pandemic really hit hard on getting products and services done, so you had to be patient. So fortunately, I was here and I could watch it.
It's really nice that he's here. I can look out and see if his lights are on, if he's doing his regular routine. I can text him if he needs something.
I really felt like it wasn't as intrusive as I was worried about it being. That was comfort to me.
If we ever want to come over here, Grandpa's always so welcoming.
It's a wonderful experience for the children to learn from my dad, get his perspective, talk through complicated topics.
I appreciate him always challenging me on the things that I think, because I think that when we surround ourselves with people that agree with us, we oftentimes kind of just make a little box of, oh, everyone thinks this way, and that's not the reality.
I love showing him new things that he's never seen before.
This thing called roadblocks, I don't understand it, but the kids just get into this automation and stuff, and it's fun to watch her do that. And of all the places I've lived since I've turned 65, this is by far the best. Having family around means a lot, and I think that's the thing that the ADU allows you to do.
The cost of building an ADU like Jerry's varies dramatically depending on things like location, design, appliances, finishes, size, materials, utility hookups, and permitting, just to name a few. So it's important to carefully research all your options. AARP has 2 publications that can help. The ABCs of ADUs, a guide to accessory dwelling units, is a 20-page primer and best practices guide. And this one, Accessory Dwelling Units, a step-by-step guide to design and development from AARP, takes homeowners through the ADU development process and includes space planning, ADU designs, finance and budgeting information. In fact, in this publication, you can find a floor plan that includes accessible features to help you as you plan for the long term. Both publications are available to download or order in hard copy. Toward the end of the program, I'll give you the details about how to access these and other valuable resources through the Your Questions Answer tool. But right now, I want to introduce you to a couple from Asheville, North Carolina. Thanks to AARP North Carolina, we get to meet Dolly and Dwight, who built their guest house with plans to have Dolly's mother move into it. Watch as they describe some of their ideas that went into the home. They also share some of the lessons learned.
We originally built it for Dolly's mother, and instead of staying in one of the bedrooms, we decided to build a cottage for her as a separate residence.
And so we thought, why not renovate, which is an understatement, rebuilding almost this property here, and she's right behind us.
Dolly started taking care of her mother really gradually in about 2000. And by 2008, I guess, she had gotten to a point where we were calling all the time on the phone to Baltimore. And we just decided that she should be here more than she's up there.
Initially, when she first came here, she lived in our house inside here, and it was very comfortable for her. And so it was really quite good. It's really quite good for her. Now, this house that we live in is a large house. It can get a little difficult to navigate if you're slowing down.
And she had her own house, in Baltimore.
Right.
And so going into a bedroom didn't make, it was good for a visit, but not to live. And building the cottage was a transition between the two. It's a kind of compromise between the two of living in our own house as opposed to living in a bedroom in our house. The cottage was built on the footprint of the carriage house that was here. And the carriage house was a 2-car garage with maid's quarters on top of it. And the city prohibited us from expanding beyond the footprint of the carriage house because of the proximity to the property line with our neighbors. So we have 900 square feet. We had a cathedral ceiling put on the second floor, and we put a wraparound porch on it so she would have access without having to walk outside in the yard. It feels bigger than what it actually is.
The first floor has a full kitchen, refrigerator, stove, microwave, little table, seats maybe 3 people. That's in the kitchen area. There is the washer and dryer. There's a little couch that you can rest in. There's a TV that pulls out from the wall, and there's a full bath and shower. You go upstairs, and up there is another full bath. As soon as you get to the top, there's another full bath. And then the bedroom is a pretty large space because it covers the kitchen. There is a large television set and a couple of small coffee tables, a small couch, and a big wardrobe. Yes, you can hang up your clothes, and some drawers.
We had a sitting area installed, and it's important because it was one of the observations. It wasn't even a complaint of people who were our guests, would be staying there through Airbnb and through guest services. But the second reason was for our grandchildren. I don't know if you remember Harry Potter, but Harry Potter lived under the stairs. And so it kind of inspired us to put the sitting area under the stairs. I think there are a couple of things I would have done differently. One of the things I would change would be the size of the windows to let more light in, particularly upstairs. I regret not having larger windows put in.
A ramp, something that allows the stairs not to be such a challenge, could have been a possibility. I'd like to think we learned from the restriction in the city. We could not do that. And so it matters if someone wants to build something for their mother, an older person, such and such, then you have to handle that. You think about how you might do that.
Also, I think that another thing is that I would have started with a seating area downstairs instead of adding it later. Because it was something that added to the intimacy of upstairs and downstairs as separate things. I still can't figure out how we could have put a second bedroom in, but if I could have, I would have.
Sadly, Dolly's mother's health deteriorated, and she was never able to live in the home they call Mimi's Cottage. Instead, the couple uses it for their visiting adult children and grandchildren and plans to make it available for short-term rentals. Speaking of grandchildren, ADUs are a great housing option for multi-generational families. In fact, we met a family in Des Moines, Iowa that bought a house already equipped with an attached suite. That opened the possibility for having 3 generations live on the same property. Brad Anderson, AARP State Director for Iowa, sat down with family members to discuss their living arrangement.
I'm Eliza.
And I'm Dan. We bought our house in 2021.
I'm Mac.
I'm Mary, and we're Dan's parents.
And we live above their garage in an apartment.
I'm Johanna.
And I'm Chris. I'm Dan's older brother.
And we live across the street from Dan and Eliza and Chris's parents.
What brought you to the neighborhood? How did you end up within shouting distance of each other, of your entire family? It was just a lucky coincidence that the house across the street from my brother and his wife that had space for my parents just happened to open up at the time that we needed to move.
We knew they were looking. We knew they were looking for more space.
This was not as far as we meant to expand. This house had a lot more room.
When they first approached you about this opportunity that came about, what was your initial thinking?
We weren't even thinking about moving. I mean, we were very comfortable where we were.
We were in a townhome.
Yeah, we were in a townhome. You want to live in an apartment above our garage? Well, you know, yeah, maybe. You know, let's go look at it first, you know.
Well, we wanted to make sure that we each had our own boundaries and that everybody understood that we were comfortable with it.
What was your first impression when you saw it?
When we first came to look at it, there was nothing there, and it looked pretty big, actually. And it's very bright, lots of windows, which makes a huge difference.
Once we saw the space and knew that Chris and Joe were across the street, it all became at least thinkable and then doable.
The ability to sort of walk across the street when mom and dad need something, or we need 5 minutes and then watch the kids or something is nice.
I have a really good relationship with my in-laws, so I'm excited that they're here. The opportunity of having cousins so close for the girls, we thought that was a really good opportunity.
So how important is it to you that family take care of family? And is that also what helped lead you to the current living situation? Personally, I never loved the idea of having a retirement community for them, or even longer term than that, like a nursing facility. And so it made me a lot more comfortable to have them closer by.
We both really liked the idea of being present and able to help with stuff that comes up. I also really loved the idea of my kids having the opportunity to be that close to them.
You're welcome.
There was as much good for us in it as there was for them, I think. I do think it makes it much easier that y'all are so independent. I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
Yes, you don't have to take care of us.
Right,
So, right,
it was very
right.
easy to decide to do that now, and how things go, but
Down the road, you may regret it.
Well, and here we are, but then we'll know each other's routines already.
Right,
I think there's a lot of future-proofing that this kind of does for us in a really positive way.
So how is that transition then, having little kids and interaction with them, and did that take a lot of getting used to?
And I can already tell that Evie feels more comfortable and feels like she understands that we are his parents, and that's how we became grandparents.
But she's been pretty good, upstairs. She knows that our little dog Lucky, when he needs to stay up there, she understands that, to keep him in. And
We are all on the same page, and so no matter where Edie goes to, which adult in the house she talks to, she's getting a consistent answer as well. And so that helps, is that we all have the same expectations of her, and she gets that.
And we've sort of found a good balance, I think, of Grandpa and Grandma are still Grandpa and Grandma.
Right,
They still get the joy and fun of Grandpa and Grandma.
It's a nice comfort that I can just kind of walk away, and I know there's going to be an adult somewhere, at least that can watch them.
one of these two will often just plant Malcolm into my lap and say, here, let him watch the golf game or the football game with you for a while. I got to do this, that, or the other thing. So
in your mind, what's the best part about living so close to your grandkids?
It's just getting to know them, getting to understand, how they live day to day. They're all just wonderful. They really are.
So did you all sit down with each other and literally walk through expectations? We talked about, budget. How are we going to share, how are we going to split utilities and bills and things like that?
It's all just sort of casual Sunday dinner conversation around what works and doesn't work. And we trust that, we love each other, we're family, we're going to be honest with each other about what's going on and what we need, and that's gone well.
We have been doing, family dinners a lot more often than we were before everybody moved in.
And that's a nice new tradition that I've been pleased has come out of this.
If someone were to come to you and say, I'm considering an ADU, what would be your advice for them?
Understanding your expectations would be the greatest thing.
Boundaries and space and honesty, I think, are huge aspects of the kind of ADU experience.
accessibility, both short-term and long-term accessibility issue. Because right now, to get from the garage to upstairs, there's 2 flights of stairs. And as we get older and things happen, that's going to be more of a situation. So we're going to put one of those chair lifts in.
Are there other renovations that you're considering to make the space your own?
We're going to put in bedroom walls and have an actual separate bedroom.
Yeah, we're going to put a washer and dryer in.
And we lucked out too. There's a neighborhood finance program in our area that helps out with the cost for all of that too. So it's forgivable loans up to like 40% of the cost of your project. And so we're taking advantage of those things.
I think it's a very, very progressive thing for a city the size of Des Moines, you know, to have this opportunity for multi-generational living is quite frankly a blessing that a lot of people don't get to realize.
What a fun family. Recently, Des Moines updated its zoning laws to allow for these flexible, family-friendly housing options. If you envision an ADU as a possibility for your family's changing needs, contact your local government. I hope you have enjoyed these stories we brought to you today. If you have any questions regarding ADUs or you want access to ADU resources, the Your Questions Answered tool can help. Here you can find answers to frequently asked questions, submit your own question for a personal response, and find other valuable ADU resources. You can access this tool 24/7 at learn.aarp.org/housing. Let's quickly review how the Your Questions Answered tool works. Click Get Started, and you will see 2 tabs at the top of the screen. Clicking on the Resources tab on the right takes you to resources, which can be downloaded and saved. The All Questions tab on the left is where you can search the tool for answers to some of the most commonly asked questions or enter a keyword to narrow your search. Be sure to take advantage of the Your Questions Answered tool. Thank you for joining us. I'm Janae Wheeler, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Janae. As you just saw, people construct these additional homes for a variety of reasons. It might be to create an opportunity for multi-generational living or to help people continue to live in their own homes by adding additional rental income. So what is allowed in Chicago? Well, here to explain that is Daniel Hertz. Daniel is Director of Policy at the Chicago Department of Housing. Welcome, Daniel.
Thanks for having me.
The Chicago City Ordinance approved the ADU legislation in 2020. Why is it important, and what does it actually allow?
The ADU ordinance was approved in 2020 in the context of a lot of concern about rising housing costs and housing affordability. We've seen, rising rents or property taxes or the costs of maintenance drive people away from their homes, from their communities, split up, families sometimes. And so the ADU ordinance was passed to create another option to create more moderate costs and affordable housing. And, it allowed for the first time in 60 years for homeowners to add one of these ADUs, a garden unit or coach house on their property.
The ordinance focuses on specific neighborhoods within the city, so people really across the city of Chicago can't take advantage of this right now. What neighborhoods permit ADUs?
The ordinance created 5 pilot zones on the north, northwest, southwest, and southeast sides of the city. So it's right that you need to be in one of those pilot zones in order to be qualified. And the ordinance also created some slightly different rules from one area to the next. So for example, on the north and northwest sides, you can build a coach house on a vacant lot before you build the primary residence. You can't do that on the south and southwest sides. Similarly, on the south and west pilot areas, most buildings need to be owner-occupied in order to be eligible for ADU construction, and that's not the case on the north side.
The project is now in its 3rd year. How's it going?
I think it's been a success. We've seen hundreds of homeowners and people use the ADU program to do what we hoped they would do, which is to create options for intergenerational living, for aging in place, for adding just a little bit of additional income or just additional housing options on the block. So we've seen over 200 homes permitted through the ADU program across the city.
Do you see the program, the initiative, expanding to include the entire city of Chicago?
That'll be up to the city council to decide that, but we certainly think it's worth a conversation.
How much does it cost to construct an ADU?
There's a big range depending on the circumstances in your building, but what we're seeing from permit data is an average of around $75,000 for garden apartments, and more than that, 130 or more than that, 130,000 for coach houses.
How does Chicago's ADU ordinance promote affordable housing?
There's two main ways, I would say. One is that if you're adding more than one ADU on your property, every other ADU actually has to be legally restricted at a certain price. So about 50% of those units. But most people are only adding one ADU to their property, and in those cases, there's no legal limit. But we do know that from seeing existing ADUs and the new ADUs that are being added, these tend to be more affordable than other housing, in the area, right? A garden apartment or coach house is going to tend to be more affordable, and especially when someone is the owner is renting to somebody they know or somebody in their family. Often they're doing so at an affordable price.
Could you provide any additional information that folks might be interested in relative to the ADU ordinance?
So a couple of important points. One is you don't have to add more off-street parking spaces for the ADU units that you create, but you also can't take existing parking spaces away. So you can't demolish your garage and replace it with a coach house without replacing that parking. Another really important thing is that you can't use an ADU for temporary or short-term rentals. So you can't put an Airbnb in your ADU.
What resources or what are additional sources of information that Chicago homeowners might want to turn to answer their questions relative to ADUs?
We get a lot of questions about ADUs. There's lots of details to dig into, and I always point people to chicago.gov/ADU, which is a website that has lots of additional materials. It has some videos that the city recorded, and it also has the ability to begin your ADU application with the city right on that website.
And earlier, Janae mentioned two publications AARP offers. They are the ABCs of ADUs, a guide to accessory dwelling units, and also Accessory Dwelling Units, a step-by-step guide to design and development. Those can be found at AARP's Your Questions Answered tool at learn.aarp.org/housing. Daniel, thank you for providing us with information relative to the ADU initiative here in the city of Chicago. And thank you for joining us.